Good evening, Facebook. This is Jodi James. I'm the president of Florida Cannabis Action Network. The team asked me to do a little bit of a highlight and lowlights about today. For some of you, you're going about your regular business and life is good and you're getting ready for the holidays, and I celebrate that. I kind of wish I could join you. Today's been a pretty powerful day for the Florida Cannabis Action Network. For the last 2 months, we've been in Tallahassee working just about nonstop to make sure that we could get some bills introduced. One would reduce fees for veterans, give them a $15 a year annual card fee. The other one would produce a reciprocity for people who are coming from out of state who are using medical marijuana so that they could bring their medicine to the state and not have to worry about leaving Florida on probation. And then the third bill is the right to garden. And we know how important it is to the folks that we represent in Tallahassee that we be able to cultivate our own medicine. We can go into the reasons on why we should be allowed to cultivate for ourselves, but we'd be here for days. I think it's a really important part of what we've been advocating for, and that personal access to the plant is one of the things that is really healing about it, not just going someplace and purchasing it. I think there's a whole different line of healing that's available when you can nurture this plant yourself. But that's my woo-woo. And a lot of our members woo-woo. We all kind of believe that. We had the pleasure on Elevated Intel on Friday. If you haven't seen the episode, it should still be available here on Facebook, to introduce SB 776 by Senator Carlos Smith. Certainly the legislator of the decade in my mind. We love Senator Smith. He's been really good to us from the time he was, even in his legislative aid days, he was good to us. And we're really celebrate his success. And he has introduced the right to garden, which is a home grow cultivation of cannabis bill that's going to allow us to have up to 6 flowering plants, and all you're going to need is your medical card. So we're really excited about that. We had a conversation yesterday about what we were doing with our veterans card, and we were really comfortable with the message that our goal was relief, access, and affordability. We wanted to see more people get relief, more people have access, and make the product affordable. And that's why we're supporting reduced fees for veterans. Some days you wake up and everything's going great, and then boom, and today was not one of those days. I woke up in a panic about making sure that we had all the resources that we need to fight the good fight in Tallahassee this year, knowing that we're behind in our fundraising goals and that it's my role to do that. So I was really kind of already motivated to make sure that we had a successful legislative session when I saw that a new bill had been introduced. And this is that time. Over the next coming weeks, you're going to see a lot in the news about new bills being introduced. I got very nervous when I saw this one. It's House Bill 719. It's been introduced by Representative Bill Partington. The team will be very glad that I got the T in Partington. Bill Partington is from the Volusia County area, and I'm sure that we're going to go into this bill in depth on Elevated Intel, so I don't want to steal all of the thunder. But I do want to let you know that right now Florida Can is working really hard to kind of balance this bill and what this bill does and who it's good for, what the doctors are going to say, because one of the things that HB 719 does is it would extend the time between doctor's visits. And quite frankly, doctors are very concerned about that diminishing their ability to give good care. They're concerned about the ability to follow up with patients and make sure that the medicines that they're using are working for them. They're very concerned about the risk it poses to patients with complex health concerns. And of course, if you only see a patient every 2 years, You'll never know if a woman of childbearing years even had a kid. And of course, we're not allowed to have cannabis when we're pregnant. This bill is really got some great things for patients. We did an analysis on this bill, and it was like, wow, they really have been listening to our ambassadors the last 5 weeks that we've been there. And if you have been one of the ambassadors who came to Tallahassee over the last 5 weeks, I want to thank you again for taking your time and your treasure and coming to Tallahassee. We spent a lot of time supporting the Veterans Bill. We spent a lot of time talking about reciprocity and keeping people who come to Florida from leaving on probation. And we spent a lot of time talking about the cultivation bill. And I'm pleased to announce that while Partington's bill is not good for the doctor-patient relationship, it does say to Florida Cannabis Action Network that the things that we've been asking for, they heard us. We're happy that Bill Partington is a Republican, and that means that the Republicans are getting on board. But right now, before we get excited, HB 719 does not have a companion yet in the Senate, and it takes a lot of work for a bill to become a law. And I've already told you the doctors aren't thrilled. It really diminishes the doctor-patient relationship, and I can agree with that. This is not a doctor-patient relationship bill by any stretch. And if you're a doctor in this space, I want you to know we hear you. And we see where you're coming from on this, and we all have a goal of protecting patients. What this will do for patients is it will expand your medical marijuana card to 2 years. Before you get excited about that, we've already heard from the OMMU that they'll just double the price of the card. So now, instead of it being $150 or a $75 card, it could be a $150 card. So there's things we're going to have to make sure to stay on top of if this bill starts to get traction. The other thing that this bill does that we have to say yes to is it provides reciprocity. It actually says that the Department of Health would have to issue a card or the ability to purchase to someone who is traveling within 24 hours of them applying. This isn't handled right. If it's not rolled out right, it's not good. Hawaii, it took 6 weeks. And so a lot of people don't go to get the card. Let's see. I'm sorry, I lost track of where I was on my list. It adds opiates as a qualifying condition. That cannot be a bad thing. It has telehealth right from the jump. Mixed bag. Again, doctors don't believe that a patient who is getting only a telehealth visit is going to get the kind of education that they might need if they're cannabis naive. Now, we know that a lot of people who are using the program right now are not cannabis naive, but people who have really complex conditions, someone who has recently been diagnosed with a chronic and terminal illness, someone who has a chronic illness that wants to start adding cannabis to their routine, or someone who has just been diagnosed with something that might be acute, these folks really need to be working with someone who understands how cannabis works in the body more than just maybe the bud tender at your local dispensary. So we're waiting and see, because nothing's nothing with the Florida legislature until it's something. We want to make sure that people get relief. We want to make sure that people have access. And certainly affordability in this day and age is something that we all are concerned about. So we heard from the doctors tonight, and they really had a lot to say and shared some very, very legitimate concerns. Cannabis is still a Schedule I drug. And if you were to go to a doctor and get a Schedule II drug, you would have to see the doctor every 3 months. Some scheduled drugs, you can see a doctor every 6 months. And then, of course, you've got other medications where you may have to see a doctor every year. But the idea that you would have a Schedule I drug and not have to see a doctor every 2 years. That was kind of a hard no for some of those physicians. And they're concerned that if they say, well, you've got cancer and you've never used cannabis before, I'd like to see you again in 3 months, and this is what it's going to cost. They're rightly concerned that that person's going to go to a different doctor that's not going to make them come back. Maybe they're going to not get the kind of education that they needed. They may be discouraged as a patient. You go and I know the first time I went to a dispensary, I probably spent $300 and didn't end up finishing any of the products that I got. And I'm not cannabis naive. So there's a lot of concerns from the doctors on what makes sense to them, what makes sense to patients, what makes sense to dispensaries. But at the end of the day, we know that this bill is going to have some very serious opposition. Drug-free America is not going to like the idea of us just moving this out and allowing anybody to have it. It's drug-free America and save our society. We've seen opposition from Visit Florida, the Tourism Bureau. Maybe they're going to say something like, do we really want a bunch of people coming to our state and smoking weed? We know that the Chamber of Commerce has been serious opposition. They spent millions of taxpayer dollars to fight Amendment 3. We can't believe that they're suddenly going to get on board for this. The rehab industry, drug testing, none of these are going to like this. Pain management industry, if you can get off of your pain management drugs using cannabis, that's good for you. That's better for your family. That's great for your long-term health outlook, but it's not great for the pill mill industry. We know that law enforcement isn't going to like this. They're going to be out there busting anybody they can just for having cannabis outside of its container or complaining about more people driving high. The OMU, if they start losing revenue, they're certainly not going to like that. We're going to have opposition from private prisons. So before you complain about this bill, I want to make sure that you realize we're going to have a lot of opposition. Before you support this bill, I want you to realize that it's going to take a really long time before this thing could be fully implemented. But at the end of the day, the best we can hope to do is go to Tallahassee, be seen and heard on this bill, pick up the phone and call your local lawmakers, make sure your friends are engaged. Don't sit down this year. We're inviting you to the Florida Cannabis Action Network's Cannabis at the Capitol. It begins early in the morning on January 14th, and it goes through late in the day on January 15th. We're going to be making meetings on the 14th with lawmakers, and on the 15th, we're going to be celebrating all things cannabis with an exhibition on the second floor of the Capitol Rotunda. We're going to do this with or without you, but we'd much rather that you were there. You can register today online for the low cost of just $50. You can go to the Florida Capitol anytime all by yourself, but you certainly can't go in one of our cool t-shirts and get our great packet and get all of the information and training without registering. We hope you'll bring a friend, because this is much easier if you do it with someone you care about. My name is Jodi James, and I am totally lucky to be working with so many amazing people with Florida Cannabis Action Network. Our board of directors and our leadership team are unlike any group I have ever had the honor of working with before. We are a 27-year-old organization, and I've been around for much of it. Not always as the president, but certainly as a volunteer and a supporter. And I've got to tell you, today's Florida Cannabis Action Network is ready to get things done. Action's our middle name. We are a network, and we're much better and much stronger with you. When you think about Cannabis Action Network, remember the Entourage Effect. We are stronger together than we are apart. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you'll like this and share it. Send it out to your friends and make sure that everybody is registered for Cannabis Action Network's Cannabis at the Capitol. You can get there at flcan.org/CAC 411. That's all the information you need about Cannabis at the Capitol. Have a great night.
Imagine standing shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of Floridians, business owners, and advocates inside the state capitol, ready to make real change. That's what Cannabis at the Capitol is all about. The signature Lobby Day and Education Expo from the Florida Cannabis Action Network, where voices intersect with policy and passion turns into progress. For just $50 for individuals, you'll gain access to expert briefings, self-guided meetings with lawmakers, and the power to influence Florida's cannabis future. For businesses, $300 unlocks premium access. Connect with decision makers, showcase your enterprise, and build alliances in a fast-growing sector. Whether you're a medical patient seeking stronger access, an entrepreneur navigating regulations, or a company ready to stand at the forefront of industry change, this is your platform. One day in Tallahassee could shift a lifetime of regulation. Join us. Be present. Be heard. Be the change at Cannabis at the Capitol.